Hi everyone, my name is Amy Upham, and I am a Master's in Public Health candidate at Lenoir-Rhyne University. And today we're going to be talking about an article on harm reduction and 12 steps, and whether those theories are oppositional, complementary, or maybe can be integrated somehow. So we're going to begin with the summary, which they interviewed 18 social workers and case managers, also their case manager supervisors, from two different treatment centers. Six clinicians were interviewed in a psychotherapy clinic in the West. That's the only detail they gave. And then 12 staff, again, case managers and their supervisors, were interviewed at a drop-in center in the Midwest. The qualitative research was based in grounded theory, so they gathered participant opinions and points of view about the programs that they worked in, their clients, and about harm reduction. And they asked one open-ended question specifically on their opinion of the ability of 12 steps to coincide with harm reduction. And this seemed to be kind of the main point of the whole research project, actually. So it was a semi-structured series of questions. They coded it openly and then did an axial code to find the common themes, and they found three common themes. The biggest one was that the staff thought that the two modalities could work hand in hand together. And one reason given is that the only requirement for AA membership is the desire to stop drinking. So you don't have to be sober or be practicing abstinence to go to an AA meeting. The second theme was that traditional treatment centers see abstinence as the only way to honor the 12 steps, and their argument is that wasn't necessarily the founding principle. And then the third one, which was lesser found, but it was a theme that emerged, is that the two modalities could theoretically work together, but staff find that the 12-step programs are often not open to harm reduction. I reviewed the article for any ethical concerns. The recruitment seemed very ethical. Supervisors, gave information about a voluntary study to their staff, and staff were able to choose whether or not to participate. In fact, about a third of staff at both locations did not. However, there was no notation on how the data was protected, or when it was coded, how it was protected. So that could be a concern. I'm going to go into validity and reliability. So both were not very high on scales of measurement, I don't think, either from a quantitative or even a qualitative point of view. It was a very small sample size. They only used the structured interview method. They didn't use any other methods, no triangulation. There was no intentional purposive sampling, so they didn't try to find outliers. There was no mention of the respondent validation, either during the interviews, checking in with members to make sure that you're understanding what they're saying, or afterwards in terms of giving the information to people and getting feedback as to whether or not that was their experience as well. So there's four things that kind of make the study not super valid. And then the one thing going for the study is that, of course, because it's narrative in a way of the individuals giving their feedback verbally, it was rich and thick description of relationships, especially between the 12 steps and harm reduction. So that's one thing it had going for it. Reliability, it wasn't duplicated. Of course, they did both of the interviews around the same time, and there was no comparison made between the two. So I'm saying it's non-duplicated. Again, very small sample size at each location. And the data was aggregated. There was no differentiation made. And I'd be interested to see that, because I would think that some of the psychotherapists might have different views than a case manager. In any case, going for the study were that the research locations were in different areas of the country. You can kind of see that as a plus or minus. I think in this, for reliability's purposes, it's a plus. And they did use the same protocol at each location. So my biggest concern with the study actually was not all of that, because it's a very initial study, and I get it's going to be a small sample size and all of that. But it's a theoretical concern. So one of the respondents, and it seemed also the authors were saying, that the reason that harm reduction could go along with 12 steps is because the only requirement for AA membership is the desire to stop drinking. And that's a quote from the Big Book. But the way I understand harm reduction philosophy is that it explicitly serves some people who have no desire to stop using. So I'd be concerned about bringing harm reduction, bringing 12 steps into harm reduction. The other way around, I think, works a little better. But bringing 12 steps into harm reduction would automatically leave some people out that are receiving those services. My big question, I think, at the end of this research was, well, now what? I think, it's an interesting, they talked a lot about theory. The discussion was half of the article, and it was just really, and also the intro was discussion of the same thing, which is the integration of harm reduction in 12 steps. But the results from the study themselves are merely descriptive. There's no guidance given on what could be done next in other studies, or even guidance on how other agencies could use this information to promote the integration. And in fact, it didn't seem that there was any inquiry as to how the respondents came to their acceptance of integration. So one of the themes emerged that, yes, a lot of staff believe that they can be integrated, but no one asked them how they came to that. So sort of like, where do we go from here? And so to me, actually, the study seemed very deductive for a qualitative study, because they kind of came with a theory and then just used the information to prove that theory, which is that they believe they should be integrated. Interesting to note that the study was conducted by 3 social workers, PhDs, but there was no public health professional involved, so that might be why it's a little less rigorous in terms of the standards and more narrative in scope. And the last thing, although they did not ask the study participants, or they didn't report on asking the study participants how they came to acceptance of the fact that harm reduction and 12 steps can work together, they did report on a study that did. So that was interesting. And one of the quotes that just really hit me between the eyes that I thought was a good way to close is something that changed one person's mind, and it said, "Dead addicts can't recover." So I think that's really salient, and it's more a theoretical article than really a research study, I would say, and it's a good read for that reason, but definitely has a lot of limitations. So I want to thank you for your time. This can be found in the journal Substance Use and Misuse from 2011. Thanks so much. Take care.